You're listening to the Range Minded Podcast, and this is episode 252. What kind of American are you? Anyways, we're going to get into that question and a little bit more in this episode of the Range Minded Podcast. Stay tuned. All right, like the intro said, this is episode 252. Can you believe 252 episodes? Now, I know I haven't been 100% consistent. I'm tired, and I'm struggling a little bit with words. Words are hard, but we'll get through it together, I suppose. Anyways, 252 episodes over the course of, since, 2018 is when we started the show. That's a lot. That's a lot of episodes. That's a plethora, if you know what a plethora would be. Anyway. Welcome back to the Range Minded Podcast. As usual, it's me, Steve. I'm glad to have you here. So I know I didn't drop an episode last week. There's a couple of reasons for that. I think I told you I changed the platform that I'm producing the podcast on. And because of that, I actually have some time restraints. So I got to make the shows a little bit shorter if I want to do 4 shows a month or 5 shows a month. So yeah, I completely ran out of time. That was the number one reason. Number 2 reason, I've been sick, right? We talked about this the last episode, the health scare episode. As you can tell, my voice sounds better. I actually feel a little better, but I still have this cough that happens every so often. So there might be some editing where I delete the cough, and it might be a different weird clip or whatever. But I do still cough. I haven't passed out for a few days, which is a blessing in my opinion. But that dang cough, I just can't get rid of it. There's still junk in my lungs. The coughs aren't as frequent, but it still happens. As far as answers from the doctors, they still haven't given me a ton of answers about. They have no idea, really no idea of what caused the cough. They're still pretty sure that the coughing agitated the vagal nerve or vagus nerve, whatever it's called, and then just tripped the breaker and out I go. But that is hopefully in the past. Hopefully I don't have to deal with that ever again. I have passed out enough in a few weeks to last me a lifetime. I do not want to deal with that anymore. But like I said, my voice still might be a little gravelly. Maybe that's sexy. Maybe you like the sound of my voice. I don't know. If you do, you probably need to seek counseling because that's weird. Anyways, I have a couple of things I want to ask you, or we'll go through in the show. First of all, the main question, I guess, that I really want to ask you is only one question, not a couple of questions, but is what kind of an American are you? Now, you've heard that or seen that meme, that stuff, that movie off Netflix or whatever. I don't even know. I don't even know what the name of the movie is, but the dude with the red glasses that asks the couple or whatever, what kind of American are you? And that's why I'm asking you this, right? Because it feels like, especially from this document we're going to go through, it feels kind of like we're being forced, pigeonholed, shoehorned, corralled, if you will, into this dystopian idea. Gaslit, really, is really what it ends up being. This is weird. Like, you remember, it's been a while. You remember the FBI created the document talking about domestic extremists and what to look for, and they had the different flags and phrases and all this stuff to look for domestic terrorists, domestic extremists. Well, they've updated that document. And you've probably seen this floating around already. If not, it's important that we go through it. Either way, it's important that we talk about this. Because what is the FBI doing? Like, I don't understand this. Like, why are they... Why, I guess. Just a whole lot of why. Anyways, let me show you this doc. It is crazy. Let's jump over here. So I'm actually going to read probably all of this. I know it's 3 pages, and I'm really good at reading. I was homeschooled. I can make a joke about it because I really was homeschooled. So suck it. I'm a little feisty. I'm a little. First, I was really tired, and then I listened to a bunch of rock and roll music to get me wound up, and now I'm wound up, and I'm probably not going to sleep tonight because I made this show for you. Anyway, so this is a recent document. This has been leaked to the public. As you can see, it is now unclassified here at the top. You can see my mouse now. I just clicked it on there. So it is an unclassified document. And again, this is just like the last one. It got leaked either prematurely or something. I'm not quite sure. Honestly, it doesn't matter. It's public information because the FBI is a public entity. I wouldn't say it's a good entity. I'm sure somebody's listening to me now just saying that. Anyways, let's get to this. So, right here at the top, militia violent extremists. So they're going to call them MVEs. Are anti-government, anti-authority, violent extremists who seek to use or threaten force or violence to further their ideology in response to the perceived abuses of power by the government. Perceived bureaucratic incompetence. It's not perceived, it's actually there. Or perceived government overreach. I think that exists already. Especially in regard to suspected infringements on gun and land rights land rights, that's weird. Gun and land rights and excessive use of force by law enforcement. They fear the government is unwilling or unable to protect the United States from perceived threats from undocumented immigrants, drug traffickers, Muslims, and certain social or political activists, and believe their actions are justified, giving their self-appointed role as protectors of the U.S. Constitution. Somebody's got to do it. As a responsibility they perceived as consistent with their well-armed citizenry sanctioned by the Second Amendment. They hold a deep belief in the conspiracy theories regarding suspicion of civil liberties and internment of American foreign invasion, a foreign invasion and occupation, and an end to the constitutional government. We'll just. I got to be careful what I say, I suppose. Here, do you guys feel like the government's kind of overreaching? Do you think the government has been incompetent, specifically the last few years? Are you worried about drug traffickers and violence coming across the southern border? Listen to this. They're gaslighting the American people, and they're pigeonholing a group of people to make us look like extremists. And we're going to go a little bit. They are putting this huge net out to pull in not just 2A people or 3%ers or whatever. There is a huge net that they're casting, and we're going to get into this. Some MVEs call themselves 3%ers, based on their belief that only 3% of American colonists took up arms against the British government during the Revolutionary War. Some 3%ers regard the present-day U.S. government as analogous to the British monarchy during the 18th century in terms of its infringement on civil liberties. The term generally represents the perception that a small force with just cause can overthrow a tyrannical government if armed and prepared. Okay. Now, they say that 3% thing is false. I don't know if it is or not. But I do believe... No, I'm not getting into it. I better not. Let's look at Afghanistan. I guess let's look at that. A bunch of backwards people held off the United States government, I guess. But that's not analogous, is it? Some MVEs use the term boogaloo. This is hilarious, by the way. Some MVEs use the term boogaloo, which reference violent uprising or impending civil war. The term has particularly I better scoot down here. You're probably missing this. Okay, the term has particularly resonated with MVEs who have adopted it to reference an impending politically motivated civil war or uprising against the government following a perceived incursions of the constitutional rights. including the Second Amendment or other perceived government overreach. Perceived. All right. Targets and tactics. Now, this starts to describe things. Traditionally, MVEs have targeted government and law enforcement personnel and facilities. I don't know what they're talking about. I haven't seen that. Unless they're talking about the Summer of Peace, when we had Chad and protesting on the streets. But I digress. Which they regard as threatening the rights of American citizens. MVEs have also targeted entities that they perceive as posing national security and social threats to the United States, such as undocumented immigrants and suspected drug traffickers along the southwest borders, Muslim Islamic centers and mosques, and suspected looters and individuals whose ideologies they oppose, including perceived anti-fascist extremist members of armed and anti-fascist. Okay, I missed the period. Including perceived anti-fascists. Period. Extremist members of armed militias that patrol U.S.-Mexico border, purportedly to assist authorities, have threatened violence against and detained migrants, and their operations increase the possibility of violent encounters with law enforcement. Some MVEs have plotted attacks in critical infrastructure or in order to provoke civil war between citizens and the government. I mean, I guess if you're thinking Minnesota, when the FBI set up a sting to kidnap Gretchen Whitmer, do you guys remember that? And they all but, well, I think 2 of them were FBI agents. So either they didn't know they were all FBI agents other than the 2 they were trying to sting in there, or they just went rogue. I don't know. It didn't happen. Tactics. Some MVEs form or become members of groups in order to advance violent plots against their targets, to prepare for emergency contingencies that they believe will require a militia. Some of these groups focus on recruitment efforts on current foreign or former law enforcement and military personnel for their weapons skills, training, and potential access to restricted databases. MVEs often subject prospective members to background checks and interviews. Ooh. MVEs in various geographic locations use the internet and encrypted applications to plot criminal activity, transmit ideology, solicit donations, recruit members, plan meetings or training events, and display training videos. MVEs conduct paramilitary training, often called field day exercises, which involve the use of firearms and sometimes explosives, and often incorporates U.S. military tactics such as combat techniques, hand signals, security detail operations, and survival skills. So let me ask you this. If I take a survival class, that's bad? If I learn team tactics, how is that dangerous? How is that bad? The government can't tell me no, I can't train that way. They don't have copyright on this shit. I'm telling you, they're pigeonholing Americans into being extremists. Everyday gun owners like you and me, people that just want to improve our skills, they're creating this extremist stereotype. So people on the far left side or the anti-gun side view us as the problem. This is dangerous. Okay? MVEs often use, MVEs often use legally purchased firearms, which is not against the law because they're legally purchased, in their illegal activities. Again, any of that training stuff, that is not illegal. Okay? That's not illegal. But notice they throw this, they buy these guns and they use them in these illegal activities. The last thing the reader's going to remember is field exercises, survival skills, team tactics. They're not illegal. In some cases, they seek to purchase firearms from gun shows, not illegal, and accessories rather than traditional dealers to avoid documentation in their purchases. Again, we've talked about this gun show loophole. It does not exist. I can private party purchase a firearm. It is not against the law. It has never been against the law, and it better not ever be against the law. But if a dealer is selling a gun at a gun show, he is legally bound by federal law to conduct a background check. That does not exist. Gaslighting at its finest. Avoid documentation on the purchases. Some MVEs, this is another thing that pisses me off, acquire illegal guns or firearms and components which they are not licensed. Okay, yeah, that does happen, including automatic weapons and suppressors. Okay, I get that. If it's an illegal gun, it's illegal. They shouldn't have it. Okay, I get that. I don't believe that some of those guns, I don't believe that some of those guns should be illegal, but that's a different conversation. Now, this is the other thing that pisses me off. Or circumvent firearms regulations and background checks by assembling firearms from components or by modifying otherwise legal guns. It is not against the law in the United States to build a firearm of your own in your own home by components that you purchase. That is not illegal. Such as converting semi-autos to full autos. Okay, I get that. Still not cool. MVEs sometimes seek to acquire or produce explosives to use in violent plots or stockpile for later use. MVEs generally attempt to manufacture improvised explosives devices using commercially available materials, though some also attempt to attain military-grade or industrial explosives. I'm not going to say what I was going to say. Let's just say that Oklahoma City, let's put it this way. The Oklahoma bombing. That was not hard to obtain, those materials. They're readily available. It is what it is. But I digress. Let's carry on. I'm probably going to get myself in trouble if I talk too much about that. All right, there are some indicators. There's things that we need to look for these violent extremist peoples. Okay, you ready for this? Indicators of militia, violent extremist ideology may comprise constitutionally protected conduct. Wait a minute. These people are following the Constitution, but anybody that could follow the Constitution could still be an extremist. Okay. And no single indicator should be the sole basis of determination of militia, violent extremism, or criminal activity. The following indicators of militia, violent extremist ideology may constitute a base for reporting to law enforcement action. Reporting or law enforcement action when observed in combination with suspicious criminal or potentially violent activity. So these are all constitutionally protected. There's nothing against the law with a lot of these things, but you should probably report it anyways, because if they're doing something dangerous, i.e. going to the range and shooting, if they're doing something dangerous, well, we need to know. Snitches get stitches, boy. Anyway, MVEs often reference, let's see, make sure I get this in the, yeah, you can see it. MVEs often reference the Second Amendment. Can't talk about the Second Amendment, boys. Allegations of tyranny and historic grievances such as federal law enforcement's handling of raids on Ruby Ridge or Waco, Texas. Some MVEs highlight the deaths of other like-minded individuals involved in encounters with the government and law enforcement, including U.S. persons Lavoy Finnegan, Duncan Lamp, and others. So we can't talk about Ruby Ridge. We can't bring Ruby Ridge up. We can't bring Waco up. Both, if you recall, complete incompetence by the federal government. Complete. Ruby Ridge, what's his name? He won a lawsuit against the federal government. He was acquitted of all of his charges other than missing his court date. $10,000 fine. Waco, that was a botched mess, but we can't talk about that because that makes you a radical, makes you an extremist. It doesn't make the FBI and the other three-letter agencies incompetent and violent. They're the violent extremists. They kill people. For heaven's sakes. Let's see. Again, this is for educational purposes only, just so you know. Just thought I'd throw that in there. Rhetoric, imaginary, and attire referencing 3% are possible indicators of MVE activity, although not all MVEs ascribe to the concept. So if you see a 3% sticker on a car, that's probably an extremist. But anybody could be an extremist. Anybody. So it may be that person or maybe somebody else. Some MVEs have used terminology and imagery associated with, this is hilarious, with the Boogaloo concept to network persons and online based on sharing, man, people need to learn how to write, sharing grievances with the government and law enforcement. Rhetoric, imagery, and attire referencing the Boogaloo are possible indicators of the MVE activity, although not all MVEs ascribe to this concept. So if they might say Boogaloo, they're an extremist, or they might not be, but somebody else also might be, but they may not be too. Clear as mud? Okay, I'm glad we cleared that up. The term is also used to a lesser extent by other actors, including racially or ethnically motivated violent extremists who advocate superiority of the white race. Some RMVEs, that's the racial ones, have used the term to reference an impending race war or other conflict that will lead to the collapse of the system, including the U.S. government and society, and allude to using shorthands such as the Big Igloo or Big Luau, and imagery such as igloos and Hawaiian shirts. Now, you see me, I love my Hawaiian shirts. And I love how they're so concerned about this Boogaloo movement that started as legitimately was a meme. Somebody made that up, and now it's like this big thing that they're concerned about. I don't even know. I've never heard anybody say, I'm part of the Boogaloo. Ooh, I've never did that. Never heard of it. It's a farce. But they could be extremists, or they might not be. Some MVEs may form a paramilitary-style organization and use paramilitary-style tactics, equipment, in accordance with their interpretation of the Second Amendment and social nature of the movement. Again, if you mention the Second Amendment, you might be an extremist, but you might not be. But you probably are, and you need to report, be reported to the government. But you might not be an extremist, but you probably are. Oh, asinine for realsies. Gosh, I better hurry. I'm running out of time here, folks. Notable attacks and criminal acts. Now, we're not going to talk about that. I want to come down here to key terms. Okay, this is important because you got to understand these key terms. The Second Amendment refers to the Second Amendment of the Constitution of the United States, a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. That is an extremist point of view, and anybody that espouses to that thought is an extremist person, and we can't do that. That's dangerous. MVEs and others within the militia movement often reference and interpret the Second Amendment to justify private militia activities and their opposition to gun laws because it says it shall not be infringed, and it talks about the militia. Weird that it might create that aspect in people. You might be an extremist if you believe that. Or you might not be. Agenda 21, a non-binding United Nations agreement that advocated for international environmental responsibility. NVE sometimes regard the Agenda 21 as a globalist conspiracy to seize rural lands prior to the UN takeover and the implementation of the New World Order. Because, you know what, it actually did talk about that, but what do I know? Oh yeah, Boogaloo. This is actually, I kept thinking it was the things prior. This is hilarious. A term... the word Boogaloo, okay, we got to understand this. A term MVEs use to describe the the nation of, and sometimes the desire for. Make sure you get this in screen so you can read this. That's my place. The term envy is used to describe the notion of, and sometimes the desire for, a second American Civil War between citizens and the government. The Big Igloo, folks. The Big Igloo, or the Big Luau, or the Boog Boys, or the Bujahideen. I think I'm going to have to make a patch for that, the Bujahideen. That's awesome. And other associated wordplay in addition to imagery such as igloos, Hawaiian shirts, and leis. Yeah, so if you go to Hawaii, you're wearing your Hawaii shirt, and you get a lei put on you, you could be an extremist, and you might get reported. So just know that, or you might not be an extremist, but you could be, so you probably are. Just be wary of that. And are used coded references to larger boogaloo phenomenon on and offline, because some people use term jokingly, and our MVEs who advocate the superiority of the white race sometimes use the term to refer to a race war. The context of the use of the term should be considered carefully. So if you even say the word boogaloo or big igloo or bujahideen or whatever some of these words are, you could be extremist, you might not, but you probably are going to get reported even though you may not be an extremist, so you probably shouldn't say it because you're probably an extremist. This is the other thing, okay? Listen to this. These people are being pigeonholed, I'm telling you. Bug out, okay? The term bug out. This is now considered a phrase that extremists use. A phrase used by MVEs and non-extremist preppers, so they could be non-extremists as well, to reference the emergency contingency planning usually involving weapons, supplies, evacuation procedures, and rendezvous locations. Okay. You can't be prepared anymore because you're going to be an extremist. The government will take care of you, okay? Don't worry about bug out procedures, because only extremists worry about preparing for things, okay? You might not be an extremist, but you could be. False flag, a conspiracy theory alleging the government carries out plots, often violent actions like terrorist attacks or mass shootings, in order to manipulate the public through fear into placing blame for violent actions on an innocent third party. Some NVEs believe the government uses such covert actions to promote its unconstitutional agenda, including sweeping military and law enforcement actions or encroachments of gun rights and other civil liberties. So are they stating that's what they're doing, or they're just saying that's what we think they're doing? I report, you decide. FEMA. Some MVEs believe under the guise of humanitarian projects, FEMA intends to gather Americans in concentration camps in conjunction with the suspension of civil liberties and establishment of a new world order. Okay. Again, I report, you decide. Let's see. Field training exercises, also known as FTX, okay? A term, can you read it under their screen there? A term used to describe tactical training. MVEs often use a phrase to describe drills in which participants train with weapons and practice tactics. These often occur under private property or in government-owned parks and forests. Guess what? As an American citizen, you can use government property. Like, we can go out in the woods and camp and shoot guns if we want, as long as it's within reason, right? Some places you can't. We talked about that before on another show. But you can train. It is not against the law for you to train. It's not against the law to train with your friends. It's not against the law to do the same things as the military does. It is not against the law to learn these tactics. But what they're doing is they're creating fear for uneducated sheep to make it look like you're an extremist so you can get reported and be spied on. That's my perception. All right. Terms continued. I love this. Oh, by the way, I forgot to show you these in this video. Let's read this first as I make terrible sounds during this read. Please forgive me. All right. Killdozer. A meme used to reference on the June 4th, 2004 incident, which an individual used a bulldozer he had armored to demolish multiple buildings in the town of Granby, Colorado, in response to his grievances with local government. The individual killed himself at the end of the rampage. By the way, Killdozer patch, common use. Oh, let me see. I better see if it'll focus on that thing. Come on now. Yes. Yes, the common use bulldozer patch, common use dozer patch is available. And it's rad. So I just thought it was fitting that you can show your extremism with a patch. Let me know if you want one. All right. Martial law exists when military authorities carry out on government exercises various degrees of control over civilians or civilian authorities in domestic territory. MVEs have justified some violent plots and made threats based on the belief of the implementation of martial law was imminent. So like Hurricane, was it Andrew? When the government came around and took everybody's guns and never returned them for their own safety. So then they couldn't protect themselves from all the looters coming around. That would probably fit in that category. So I'm just saying. Molon Lobe, that is also an extremist thing, okay? An ancient Greek expressions translating roughly to come and take them, which some MVEs use to communicate their willingness to violently resist gun control. Yep. Thank you. New World Order, a term used by some MVEs and other conspiracy theorists used to describe the supposed international plot to suspend American citizens' civil liberties and institute global social governments. Oathbreakers, a phrase used by some MVEs, used to describe law enforcement and government officials who they believe have violated their oaths to uphold the Constitution, often related to gun rights and civil liberties. Yeah. Yeah. If you're violating the Constitution, you violated your oath of office. I don't know how that's extreme. Patriot movement, a general term sometimes used to describe loose affiliation between militia movement and some members of the sovereign citizens movement and tax protesters. Participation in the movement is not in itself sufficient basis for investigation. Again, I mean, you could be an extremist, but you might not be, but you probably are, so they're going to investigate you. So, there you go. Let's see, where was I? Yep, a patriot political prisoner. A term some MVEs use to describe subjects who they believe have been unjustly prosecuted and incarcerated for engaging in MVE activities. So they're referring to January 6th. Okay? So those people that were let in the Capitol building, and the only people died that was Ashley Babbitt, who was shot by, that's right, a dude with a badge. Yeah, were there violent people there? Yes. Were they dirtbags? Mm-hmm. Yeah. But there was a lot of people that weren't. They were just there. All right. Prepping. Yeah. Do you guys actually do food storage? Well, you're an extremist. The term used to describe stockpiling of supplies, often including food, water, medical equipment, and weapons, in preparation for a major man-made or natural crisis. While this can include illegal explosive and illegally modified firearms, prepping is generally legal. Then why is it on there? Why did you say it? And it's not in itself an indicator of militia or of a militia violent extremism. So it's not illegal, but, you know, just look at them just in case. Quick reaction force. The term MVE sometimes adopt in order to describe their capability and willingness to respond to encounters or incidents between fellow MVEs and perceived adversaries such as law enforcement, often with the expectation that they will engage in violence to protect each other. Red flag laws or extreme risk protection orders. Sorry, for some reason I had a brain fart there for a second. Allow courts to issue orders to temporarily confiscate firearms from individuals deemed to be at risk to themselves or others, typically typically at the petition of law enforcement or family members, but sometimes other individuals, such as educators or health professionals. MVEs often regard such measures as unconstitutional and indicate that they will respond violently if they or their companions are red flagged, because it is an illegal, unconstitutional law and it violates many of your civil liberties. Not just the First Amendment, or the Second Amendment, but the Fourth, I can't remember. Several. They're taking your property without compensation. There is no due process. It's illegal. It is an unconstitutional law. So, yeah, people get pissed about it. And notice that it says, well, it's cops and family members, but it can be anybody, really. Anyway, shit hits the fan, right? Here's another phrase. An acronym, S-H-I... I almost spelled the word. SHTF. An acronym MVEs and others often use referring to major military, economic, or political or social crisis that militia organizations anticipate and prepare for as justified for their existence. That's not what that means. It means if stuff goes down, happens, shit hits the fan, you're prepared. But if you use that phrase, if you use that acronym, you're probably an extremist. 3%ers refers to the militia movement based on the myth that only 3% of Americans fought against the British during the American Revolutionary War. Adherents to this myth adherents use this myth to pledge or justify their willingness to use force to resist the restrictions of firearms or civil liberties against the present-day U.S. government and other government entities which are viewed as akin to the British during the Revolution. Self-identification as a 3%er or use of 3% symbols should not independently be considered evidence of militia affiliation or illegal activity. So if you have a sticker, like we said on the car, that may not mean you're in a violent group, but it could be. So we're going to check it out, but it may not be. So we'll just check it out just in case. Unorganized militia, term used to describe the reserve militia, one of two classes of the militia defined under the Militia Act of 1903, which some MVEs use to justify their activity because it does, in other classes, the other class to organize a militia, which consists of the National Guard or the Naval Militia. All right, so I know that's a lot of reading, but I felt like it was important for us to go through this document. They are pigeonholing the American people. Anybody that espouses to freedom, to patriotism, to the Second Amendment, because just saying the Second Amendment is an extremist point of view. Do you see what they're doing? Pay attention. Wake up. What they are doing is they're creating this sphere of extremists around freedom. If you're a freedom-loving American, if you love your firearms, if you love to garden, if you love to prepare for like things that could happen in the future, if you save money, if you put food storage away, if you buy guns, if you stockpile ammunition, right? They'll tell you 100 rounds is a stockpile of ammunition because you're worried about what could happen, just like your great-grandparents probably did in the 20s, in the 30s. Right? They're forcing us into this place to make other people that don't have the same perspective of freedom to make us look like extremists. Firearms owners, firearms enthusiasts that love to train, to shoot in competitions. People that garden, people that prep, people that have bug out bags in their cars. Okay? They're forcing us into this one little hole to make us look like we're the crazy people. Now, I've worked on a lot of ranges. I've talked to a lot of people. I know that there are a lot of weird, crazy people involved in the 2A community and the prepping community. I get that. But this is dangerous language coming from the feds to make you look like you're a bad guy. They lump you in with domestic terrorists. if you do any of these simple activities that are constitutionally protected. Wake up. Wake up. The extremism is coming from the federal government. That is extreme. And what it's doing is dividing America. Because the people that may not like guns or may not see the need to do food storage are going to look at you like you're crazy. And then it'll divide you even more because they don't want to associate with people that are crazy, right? It's just like calling somebody a racist. That's why they like to throw that in the arguments when you're trying to talk to somebody on the left, on the extreme left, and they'll say, oh, well, you're a racist, because they're trying to disengage from you. It is crazy to think that our government is dividing our country. They're tribalizing its citizens. The only reason why you would divide and agitate is to create chaos. But yet, just me saying that, look at that puts me on this list because it's a conspiracy theory. Wake up. You know, we're at a point in this country where if you're not registered to vote, get your ass out there and register to vote. It's a big deal. I don't even care who you vote for. I know who I'm going to vote for. But listen, just in the state of Idaho, where I live, there are over 100,000 gun owners and hunters who are not registered to vote. 100,000. If you took it the whole United States, there's over 10 million gun owners and hunters that are not registered to vote. Why in the hell, if you're one of these people, why in the hell are you not registered to vote? Even if you're not a Republican, but you like guns, you're being pigeonholed as a domestic terrorist. Wake up. One side is just about destroying the republic. They say it under the guise of democracy. Our founding documents have never, and they never said anything about a democracy. Anytime our founders talked about a democracy, it was in a negative tone. Look it up. You do not have to believe me. Nowhere in the founding documents is democracy mentioned. Nowhere. But what is mentioned is a republic, a representative government. That's the only fair government where the little guy has a voice, where the minority has a voice. And they're taking that from you. Wake up. The only way they can destroy a republic, the only way they can fracture a government is by division. Right? Was it Lincoln that said a house divided cannot stand? Wake up. Register to vote. Speak your mind. It is your right. Quit spending so much freaking time buried in your phone and learn and see and pay attention. Look at the world around you. We talked about situational awareness. That includes your government. Like, look at what's going on. We had a presidential candidate attempted assassination just a few weeks ago, and you can't even find it on the internet anymore. It's swept under the carpet. Why? Because that would win him the election. You talk about that makes him look more human. That makes him look like a survivor. That makes him look like a strong leader. They don't want you to see that. Instead, we have somebody that's been in office for the last 4 years that hasn't done anything. She's the greatest. She has done nothing. She can't even have an interview where she doesn't ramble off the rails and deter from the question. And her vice president candidate that she's thrown in the mix, he's a liar. He's a coward and a liar. I don't care about his service. That's great. Sure, He served in the National Guard for 20 years, but he lied about his service. He's not the highest decorated person in Congress. He lied about his service. And he lied about all sorts of stuff. Continually lies. He doesn't even know the name of it or the color of his dog. Did you see that? He doesn't know. It's Scout. There's 2 different pictures of him online. Scout, this is my dog Scout. One's a yellow lab, one's a black lab. Is it just a photo op? Come on, dude. Come on. These people are blowing smoke up your butt. Don't buy it. Do your own research. Pay attention, please, for the love of Pete. If you're a Democrat and you own guns, look at the latest gun control act that they want. It takes everything away. You want to hunt? Too bad you're not going to have a gun to hunt. It does not matter. They do not want you to have a gun. Why? What's the purpose? Look, another extremist point of view. What's the purpose of the Second Amendment? It wasn't for hunting. It wasn't for target shooting. It wasn't for sport. It was to withhold the federal government. I shouldn't say that. No. It was to hold back a tyrannical government. I misspoke. It was to hold back the tyranny of an out-of-control government. It was for the people to keep peace and safety. And if that makes me an extremist, so be it. This is not a call to action. This is not a call to arms. I'm not saying build a militia and stomp the grounds of the Capitol. No, that's bullshit. But what isn't bullshit is we the people. We are the answer. We're the key to this mess. Because of our apathy and our laziness and our thinking that it would never happen here, that's why Congress is such a freaking mess. But we're the key. Vote those people out, put new people in. Run for yourself. Whatever. We the people are the key. The founders weren't stupid. The founders understood that a nation without principles would fall apart. They knew this. Now get off your laurels. Anyways, I better stop there. I was going to talk about something else, but you know what? Sometimes you just got to monologue. Listen, I totally appreciate you guys, and I've got a lot of attention and kind words and prayers about my ailment, and I appreciate you guys more than you know. More than you know. I've felt the difference in prayers from you guys, and God is real. God is real. You don't have to believe in him, but I do. Anyway, if you like this show, if you like this kind of content, if you like the length of this show, please let me know. If you have any comments, please, you can watch this on YouTube. You can watch this on Rumble. I know some of you guys listen instead of watch. That's totally cool. But please, if you like the show, give us a rating, comment about it, share it with your friends. I want this show to be something that people want to hear. And the only way they're going to hear it is if you share it with them. So please, I would appreciate it. If you want one of these dozer patches, also check this out. There's the 2A patch that I'm not going to pull out of the plastic. Both of which put me on this list. But you can be on the list with me. I don't have to be here on alone. So if you want one of those, just private message me. Honestly, they're actually available on brain fart again. I'm recovering, all right? eBay. They're available on eBay. If you need the link, whatever, I'll put the link down there. But honestly, I'm on X way too much. You can just direct message me on X. If you're not following me on X, you're missing some saucy content, some spicy content. Sometimes I say funny things and I piss people off. Anyway, you can find me on X at Range Minded Podcast on there or on any other socials. If you need links to all the other socials, just go to the website, rangemindedpodcast.com, and there's a place you can just click on there and it takes you right to any of those social pages. Anyways, love you guys. Be safe. And don't forget, you got to take somebody shooting. See you later.